The Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms by David. In 1882, the Queen signed the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. This allowed us to have democratic rights, mobility rights, legal rights, language rights, minority rights, enforcement rights, religious rights, freedoms, and equality rights. First, let's talk about democratic rights. Every Canadian is allowed to vote over 18, even prisoners and men at war. Now let's talk about mobility rights. Every Canadian is allowed to move in, out, and around Canada freely. Now let's talk about legal rights. If you commit a crime, bang! Then a police officer has to read you your rights before taking you in. You have the right to go to court and have a trial. If you are pledged innocent, then you're free. And if you're pledged guilty, you go to jail. Now let's talk about language rights. There are two main languages in Canada: English and French. So every sign has to have English and French. Now let's talk about minority rights. Every child has the right to go to school. If you are French, you are allowed to go to a French school. Now let's talk about enforcement rights. If any of these rights are not followed, you have the right to go to court and complain about it. Now let's talk about religious rights, also known as general rights. You have the right to follow your own religion and allowed to practice your traditions. And now let's talk about freedoms. You have the freedom to say out and the government can't interfere. And now equality rights. Everybody has the same rights, no matter race, gender, religion. The end.
The Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms by
Zenia
and Payton.
Here are our rights. Democratic rights, language rights, minority rights, freedoms, legal rights, equality rights, and mobility rights. In 1882, the Queen signed the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which allowed us to have all of our rights and freedoms. First, let's start off with democratic rights.
All people over the age of 18 have the right to vote.
Even prisoners can vote, and people from faraway lands. I mean army people from faraway lands. Next let's do language rights. There are two main languages, English
And French.
so forth. Every son should have English and French. Now let's talk about minority rights. Every child has the right to go to a school.
And if you speak French, then you have the option to go to a Francophone school.
Now let's talk about freedoms. Every person has the right to have their own opinion.
And the government can't interfere. No more war! No more war!
Now let's talk about legal rights. If you commit a crime, kapow! Then your officer has to read you your rights before they take you away. And you have the right to go to the Supreme Court to argue or defend. If you are guilty, then you go. If you are non-guilty, then you are free. Yay! But if you're guilty, you go to jail. Bye-bye. Now let's talk about mobility rights.
Everyone in Canada can go in, out, and around Canada. Oh, Alberta, Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Alberta.
I'm sorry.
Now let's talk about equality rights. Everyone has the same rights. I have a right.
I have a right. I have a right.
I have a right, even though I'm in jail.
I have a right.
Kapow!
The end.